Hey all, Pixel here, Improbable Garage, and we're back on the van and we're back on the front end, hopefully for the last time, because I want that out of my garage. I haven't been looking forward to this because it's going to be a big, heavy, nasty project. But this takes up so much room that I need to do this job just to get the rebuilt front end out of the way. So I'm going to put the van up in the air and I got some taller jack stands to get under it. My biggest concern is getting the old one out and getting that one in height-wise. I think I'll be okay. So let's get it up in the air. Let's get under there and start taking stuff off. So to make my life easier, I'm going to strip as much off the front cross member before it comes out as possible, just because I don't know how unwieldy this is going to be. So let's make it minimally unwieldy. So I got to pop the tie rods off. I got to take the caliper off. I got to unbolt the caliper up here. Similarly, I have to disconnect the ABS sensor here. I'm not sure if it's easier to take the sensor off there or unplug it up there. We'll figure that out later. Shock has got to come loose and probably off just to be out of the way. I'm gonna see if I can strap this up somewhere so that I don't have to disconnect the brakes. And then I'm going to jack up. I think what I'm trying to decide is whether I'm going to crack the lower ball joint or the upper ball joint first. Actually, I think I'm going to crack, might as well crack both of them, I guess. The brakes are coming back on because these are fairly new. The front end was all rebuilt a year or two ago. Shocks are fairly new. So the only thing I really have to rebuild is, I have to do is the front end parts themselves. There's apparently an absolute F ton of bolts holding this thing on, so I'm going to have to track all of those down. My plan is to pull them all out and if at all possible just put new grade 8s in so I don't have to worry about the condition of any of them. So yeah, nothing to it but to do it, I guess. All right, got the spindle out, got the spring out. So now this is disconnected. This is obviously disconnected. I had to beat on this to get it loose. I may be able to clean up the threads and reuse it. I may end up having to replace the tie rod. It's going to be a bummer if I have to replace it because it's basically new, but it was not coming loose, and getting in there with the pickle fork, I was going to tear the boot anyway. This is out of the way. So now I have the 2 bolts up here to get the upper control arm out, which is going to be a pain because they're kind of in the way by the upper control arm. I'm hoping that I tried doing it with zip tie, it wasn't strong enough, but I'm hoping I can put a ratchet strap around and basically pull this down enough to be able to get a tool straight on there, because I don't have room to get a wrench in. If it looks like it's going to be really hard, I'm going to skip it and just leave it on there because I don't need to take it off. It's not blocking any of the bolts. I'm like 80% sure. No, I'm wrong. There's a bolt there. Well, hell, it's blocking 2 of the bolts, so I'll be able to get it. I don't know. I can probably get those bolts off without getting it off, but it's going to be a absolute pain in the ass. And then the bottom here, I'm going to get I've got this. I got to hook it up, and then I'm going to heat these up and see if I can get these U-bolts out and get the lower control arm off. And then that'll be, like, if this has to stay and I can get to the bolts, that's fine, but I want to get this one out of the way because that's a lot of weight that I can take off. These are actually not, oh, this one's a little, the top one's kind of weak, bottom one's not terrible, it's still pretty tight. Of course I ruined it getting it off, but the main reason I'm doing this is these bushings are all, like, I don't know how well you can see it, but they're all cracked. See? So they're due to be replaced. The bottom ones are just as bad, if not worse. So, like, those bushings are the main reason I'm taking this apart. And if I was going to take it apart, I was going to do it all. All right, got the lower control arm off. It actually came off pretty good. Everything seems to be in good shape, which is good because there's somebody who wants to buy those off of me who's local. So it'll be good that somebody else's van will be able to get new lower control arms as a result of me doing this job too. I've decided I'm leaving the upper one on. Off camera, I pulled these two upper bolts and they came out easy, so I didn't have to worry about that. And the lower ones, I looked at the other one and it's a welded on nut on this side and it's a bolt on the other side. So I don't need to get a tool in there for that. I just have to get in from the other side. So at this point, there's two bolts that come in this way. I've already gotten the two bolts that come in this way out. And then there's three bolts across here that hold it to the cross member this way. And then that side is completely unbolted. The other thing though is that there's the motor mount. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unbolt those from the engine and bring the whole control arm down with the motor mounts and the motor mount tower on it. Pull those off, clean the motor mounts up, bolt them onto the new one, or the towers. Look at the motor mounts, see if they need to be replaced or if they're good, and then go forward from there so that when I put this back in again, it can get lifted up and slot right back into there, because it's easier than taking all those little bolts off in here and then trying to get them back in because you have to reach them all up through here. But this cross member is a lot crustier than the other one, but it still looks like it's very structurally sound. The lower control arm on this side at least looks like it's still structurally sound, but again, it's a much crustier one. So I don't regret buying that other one because the parts were just cleaner and nicer to work with. But I'm done on this side, except for unbolting it from the physical van. So I basically have to repeat this entire process on the other side. I'm not going to film that because you've already seen it once. I'll just film anything that's interesting that comes along. And once I get the other side to this point, we'll then move forward from there. And we're as stripped as I'm gonna. So that's basically ready to come off in the same way on this side now. They're pretty much the same. So now I've got the two motor mounts up there. There's one that are going to need their bolts loosened and ready to be removed. I need to support the engine, I need to support the cross member, and then I need to take out the remaining mounting bolts, which I hope I've got all of them. Like, I hope I know where all of them are. It'll be a pain to have to find some. But yeah, whew. Hard work, but not anything complicated. It's all just very straightforward. I got the jack set up supporting the engine. I've got the quick jack in here that's going to support the cross member. I haven't got it quite in the exact spot. I've just kind of shoved it under there. So the next thing I got to do is get the engine mount bolts out. All right, so you just watched time lapse of me getting the driver's side basically unbolted. There's still two bolts that have been taken out and put back in so that it stays in place, but it's all, I know it'll all come right back out. The big problem I'm running into, and I ran into it on that side and it's even worse on this side. Sorry, I'm moving stuff while I'm talking to you. Is the two that come in from the other side of the frame rail. Are basically like the worst of all possible worlds. I can't get an impact tool on them because there's an engine in the way. And the ends of them, everything else bolts up into the frame rail. So the nut that it's going into is protected inside the frame rail, and any threads that stick out past it are protected inside the frame rail. These that you can't get an impact tool on, again coming this way, the nut is welded to the plate on the cross member and then sticks out into this area over here, which is full of sand and dirt because that's where the tire throws everything up. So all the threads on it that are past that nut are all trashed. So they're miserable because you're trying to force these rusty, messed up threads through the nut. Like the initial break loose wasn't the problem. It was that those threads And I did 3 of them and they all sucked. And this last one that's over here is the worst of the lot and has a bunch sticking out. And I'm just kind of it was lying there like fighting with it at like 2 clicks of the ratchet wrench each turn, and each one of those was a fight. And I realized, it's like, why am I going through all of this? I'm not reusing that bolt. I'm not reusing this cross member. I'm not reusing any part of this. So I don't have to be gentle about it. I don't have to take it apart the right way. So what I'm going to do is, since I can't get this out of the way, I'm literally going to cut this upper control arm because you can buy that new, so there's no reason it needs to still exist. I need to plug it in first, though. It'd be a lot more dramatic if I remembered that. All right, so the goal of this was to get access to the other end of the bolt, but unfortunately, it's buried still, but you can see how bad it is. It's just all fucking nasty. But at least I can get this off, and maybe then I can get... I think, like, realistically, this cross member is not great. It might be better than a rotted out one, but it's not a good one. So I think I'm going to pull... Am I lucky? Is it the same bolt size? Obviously, I can't recommend this if you're planning to reuse your cross member. All right, I got it out. I don't think you'll be able to see, but where the dark there starts, that's the really nasty threads. So it's literally just those 4 that I'd gotten to so far that were making this impossible to remove, and I still had at least twice that to pull into it. So I don't regret this in the slightest, because again, this is not really a good cross member. So what's going to happen now, I'm going to undo the few vertical bolts, and I think and I hope to God that that's everything. All right, that's definitely loose. I just, when I undid the last one, it settled onto the quick jack. Now, a thing that's going to be a little bit awkward is because of where the jack had to be for the engine support and how much the quick jack moves in an arc. What I'm going to have to do is lower it down a bit and then basically like pull it towards the front, the whole quick jack assembly, lower it down, pull it forward, and I'm hoping that doesn't get tangled up in all this stuff, but I guess we'll find out. And there it is. It is out. The only issue I really ran into when I was lowering it was the battery cable for the starter hooked itself under that long ear on the motor mount. So I had to bring it back up enough that I could unhook it from that, and then it went down just fine. So yeah, the only thing I'm really reusing off of this are those motor mount towers, because the one I got this off, my replacement one came off a V8 and they're different for a V6. So I needed to scavenge those. Other than that, I don't need anything else from this. So I guess the next step is drag this off and cue that one up. All right, and we're back. I went and bought a bunch of grade 8 hardware. I've got the motor mounts painted and bolted on. They're still actually kind of wet, but it's fine. Nobody's going to see them. So this is basically ready to slide back there and attempt to install. It's going to be a little interesting doing it one person. I did make another discovery that hopefully I can figure out what I did, because this is the hardware for the upper ball joint. Like, it's the nut and the cotter pin and the grease fitting. I do not seem to have a corresponding bag for the lower one on either side. So I don't know what the heck I did with that. So that might get interesting. I don't really want to reuse the old castle nuts if I don't have to. But I guess if I really, really have to, I can, but I really don't want to. Basically, yeah, I just need to get this lid back and get it up and see if I can line it up and bolt it in. The new hardware should make that easier, because I'm not going to be fighting with old bolts. So, yeah, here we go. All right, it is in and freestanding. Quick check still under there, but it's not supporting it anymore. The jack's not supporting the engine anymore, so it is in. Not all the bolts are tightened. The motor mounts aren't tightened, and the 4 inner bolts, those ones that were such a pain in the ass, 2 this way and 2 that way on the other side, aren't tightened because access just sucks, and my shoulders hurt from taking them out, so I'm not feeling it to put them in. But it is in. I will definitely give you a hint. If you have to put one of these cross members in, when you're lifting it up and in, these will be very easy and obvious to see. Then there's the light. These 2 up at the top will be very easy and obvious to see. So your inclination will be to get those 2 in. If you can get it in the right place to get these to go in easily, do it, but don't fight with them to get them in, because it's very easy to have this cocked slightly and have those trying to go in at a weird angle even though you don't realize it. What I would say to do is, if you can get one or two of those in on either side easily, like it'll screw in easily, do it. But if you can't, if it keeps feeling like you're fighting it or cross-fitting it or whatever, don't fight it. Instead, go for the 3 that are up under here. The reason this is dropped down is, even if you have the lower control arm in, if you drop it, you can reach the 3 holes nice and easy and straight shot up. Put these 3 in, get them started on both sides, and then put, tighten, like I would say just tighten one up, but tighten that up. It'll suck the whole thing up enough that you can get these lined up correctly. Same with the ones on the inside. Also, if you're not in the Northeast like I am and your hardware isn't all nasty when it comes out, like, I just want to be very clear, like, this stuff's all really gross and nasty. Yes, it's probably safe, but I don't want to put rusty hardware back in if I don't have to. I only reuse it where I really have to, which is why I use the grade 8s. But if your hardware is in good shape, reuse your hardware rather than going for new ones, because the one thing these all have is it starts off with part of the, like, it's a taper and then a blank shank and then the threads start, which is much easier to get in the hole correctly and correctly threaded. You're going to fight it a lot less. I had a lot of problem with these, and I think I may have even still cross-threaded 1 or 2. So the original hardware is definitely going to be easier to get in correctly. I think what I'm going to do now is put a couple turns on each of the 4 inner ones and probably do up the motor mounts so I don't have to remember that those are loose. And then I'll be done for tonight because it's all secure. It's not going anywhere. The engine's not going anywhere. Nothing's balanced precariously. And then I'll come out maybe tomorrow and finish tightening those up and then start reassembling the front end. The fact that I'm missing those bags of hardware for the lower ones is definitely a potential major issue. I really don't know what I did there. Can't even guess. Because I don't think I've seen anything like that and tossed it, thinking, oh, these are extras. But it's been a while since I put these together. So I thought I had put all the hardware with it. I thought I'd in fact put both hardware for the top and the bottom up in there. The fact that I didn't, I don't know now what the hell I did. Did it get? No, it's not in there. I didn't think that was not a likely thing. But yeah, I mean, I still call this good progress for the day. Got the old one out, got the new one in, got the motor mount towers painted in on it, all new hardware. And so the next step is reassemble the suspension. And I got a little surprise there that I'm really looking forward to. All right, it's another day. Got the last of those bolts tightened down, so the entire cross member is locked down. The engine's locked to the cross member. So that the cross member swap itself is done. Now it's a matter of put the front suspension together. And I said something about having a surprise. The big box that's been sitting on the counter for whatever is a set of lowering spindles for this. These are, and we're going to double check that this all works. I've read that it works, but we're going to find out what the actual truth is. These are a set of Western chassis lowering spindles for a Chevy C20 pickup with a 1.5 inch rotor. I have read multiple things online that say that these will work for the van. And they look very similar. And I test fitted the ball joints and the tie rod when they were still loose before I installed them into the control arms. So I know that they'll fit into it. The brakes look the same as that one, so that should work. The only question is going to be wheel fitment relative to the control arms. Because the other thing I've heard, independent of these spindles, but just using lowering spindles on these vans in general, is the issue of a 15-inch wheel hitting the lower control arm or peeling being so close that it peels the wheel weights off of it. So we're going to test fit this. We're going to pull the brake spindle off, pop it onto this, put it on, and then put the wheels I want to put on the front of this on and see how that all goes together. I have not found the castle nuts and stuff for the lower control arm. I have a horrible, vague memory of cleaning up in here and seeing some laying around and thinking like, oh, these must have been from the Prius because they were near some Prius parts that were still around. Like, I'm not sure I'm remembering that correctly, but I have this vague inkling in the back of my head that that's what happened, that I saw them in the wrong context or out of context and decided that they were something I didn't need. So we're going to find out. I've looked around, I haven't found them. I've looked in a couple places. So for right now, I'm going to fit it with the old castle nut from the old control arm because it's the only one I've got. And then I will have to locate new castle nuts. I'm not going to put the spring in because I'm just temporarily bolting this together. I'm just going to use the jack to lift up the lower control arm to approximately ride height. Just because if I'm barely bolting this in, that's not safe with the spring in there. So let's get to it. All right, so I've got it all together. The nuts are literally on by a couple of threads. This one doesn't even have a nut. The rotor is on. The caliper's on without any pads because I just want everything here. Right now it's sitting on the upper bump stop. So this is the lowest the suspension can droop. So the plan is I'm going to fit the wheel up, see if there's any obvious problems right away. And if not, I'm going to turn the key so it unlocks the steering column. And then basically like jack this up to what feels like ride height. And turn the spindle both ways while rotating the wheel to see if there's any place that it hits, because if it's very slightly hitting it, like massive extreme lock, I can clearance slightly, but if it's really going to smash into something, that'll be, you know, obviously not a fixable thing. So what wheel is going on the front? You may ask if you haven't seen a lot of this channel. More slot mag. The mismatch wheels that have been on here, I really actually like the look of the torque thrusts and the slot mags on the back. They've got an interesting sort of, I guess my bag of bits. Oh, here we go. They've got an interesting sort of almost gasser feel to it, but my vision of a sweet boogie van has always entailed running slot mags front and back. I picked up a set of 4 of these on my way back from Philadelphia last summer. Not this one that just happened, the one before. I actually picked up 4 because it was a good deal. These have these weird, stupid, they're unilugs, so they have these dumb offset washers, because these will fit 4.5, 4 3/4, and 5. For 4 1/4, you put this circle towards the center. Oh, sorry, 4 1/2, you put the circle towards the center. For 4 1/4, there's another washer with the circle centered. And then for 5, you put the circle out on the outside. And that spaces the lug nuts properly in the slotted holes in the wheel. Now, a thing I kept meaning to do and kept forgetting to do because I kept putting the front end off in general was I meant to restore 2 of these wheels like I did in the back, sand them down, get them fully polished. I did a basic job on at least 1, possibly 2 of sanding them just to see how they'd come up, but I didn't go through all the steps. I didn't get them fully polished. So I am going to have to go back and do that step. So it's possible that, unfortunately, this is going to get the stock steelies put back on the front to go run it to an alignment while I deal with that. So that's interesting. So these are a newer slot mag. I say that because they have SEMA stickers that they comply to all SEMA regulations, and I don't think SEMA's full back to the 70s, though I could be wrong. I don't know the brand. There's no brand. I love that there's a SEMA quality tag, but there's no brand that I've been able to find on them. I didn't look hard because I just assumed they were no-name Japanese wheels. But, yeah. I may just run it with the stock steelies to go get it aligned while I finish up these and order some new tires, because the thing that was finally the impetus to be like, I just got to do this damn front end, is I kept putting it off because I didn't want to deal with the last step because I knew this was going to suck, and I was right. It's actually, I did all the other work Saturday, and it's now Monday because Sunday I was in far too much pain. I'm still not healed, but I was in far too much pain on Monday or on Sunday to even think about working out here. Both of my rotator cuffs were a mess, as well as both of my carpal tunnel in both front hands, because my body is a disaster. But the thing that, let go of my glove. The thing that was kind of like, okay, I need to get the front end dealt with, but there's kind of no point before that, was the front tires on the van were not wore out, but they were near wore out. When it passed inspection this summer, the guy at the inspection station was basically like, I passed you because they're right on the wear bars, and I know you well enough to know you're not gonna, you're gonna get them replaced soon. So I was putting off doing the front end until it was due for new front tires fully, because there was no point in putting new tires onto a worn out front end. But also, I was putting off getting tires because I was putting off the front end because I wanted, yeah, you get the idea. I was using both as an excuse to be lazy. Ooh, that is close. That is really close. I cannot get my finger between the lower control arm, the end of the lower control arm, and the wheel. It's that tight. Top, there's plenty of space. This is tight also over here. So, yeah. I need to go unlock the steering and move this jack. I'll be right back. All right, hopefully you'll be able to see something from that angle. First off, this is a 8 or an 8.5 inch wheel. I can't remember now because I bought them so long ago. The rear has 10s, and I specifically wanted 10s because I wanted that fat meat sticking out of the van. This is interesting because this is actually proud of the front. So the front wheel is actually going to be out of the wheel well on the front, which is not quite what I wanted. It's not bad, but I actually wanted the front tucked in a little bit more because I wanted it to stay within the wheel well, because I like fat meats in the back and not so much skinnier meats in the front, but like less sticking out, because I wanted to be able to just run rear fender flares. But I'm not going to stress about that. But like, yeah. I jacked this up just a tiny bit. It's still way down. It's just basically off the bump stop. And we're totally cool there. Now if I crank the steering, that's full lock. And ooh, that's like, I see what they're talking about. See if I can show you. I don't know how well you can see that, but like there is a few paint thicknesses between that wheel and the lower control arm over there at full lock. I assume that's what they're talking about when they talk about clearance issues. Like that is so close. Let me see, screwdriver blade. Yeah, less than halfway up the screwdriver blade is the thickness where between them. So that's really tight. Oh. So the upper control arm is totally in the wrong place because it has no shims in it. It isn't tightened down. But honestly, the problems with where it is are only going to make this worse, not better. Let me put the nut on this because, oh no, this is the damaged one. Yeah, it's a whole other thing. It's the damaged one. Now, full lock the other way. And not quite as close, but damn close. So, I'm going to go up with the jack. No, fuck it, I'm going to go all the way to the bump stop. Okay, so that's locked. I mean, I can force it, but that is at full height. It is catching on the corrosion on the back of the wheel. That's how tight. Either the wheel's not straight. God, I hope these wheels are straight. Yeah, oof, that's close on both sides. So the good thing is it's only actually touching at the extreme of full compression, full right hand lock. I can't actually imagine a situation where those two things would happen simultaneously. To have the wheel all the way up as hard as it'll go against the bump stop in the wheel well and turned all the way to the right. Like at that point, if I've got that happening, the fact that the wheel scraping is the least of my problems. But what's good is if it just barely touches, then what I can just do is both sides of this, I can just shave it back. If I just clearance that a little bit, maybe I'll just put maybe instead of it being a slant, I'll make it a curve. And that'll give me the clearance I need, because the tie rod is further away at this rotation. And then turn it all the way this way. Put the tie rod back in. Yeah, the tie rod's fine. At dead center, like straight, it's a little bit close, but not. It's never going to get closer because of the way the tie rod's locked into the this. So when it's at full droop, when it's at a certain angle, the tie rod gets close, but there was space there. There was more space in the bottom, and at this angle, it gets further away the further it is from droop. So that's fine. The upper one, not even close. You can throw a bunny between the wheel and the upper tire and the upper control arm. So it's just this. Oh, here, now I can actually show you better. This is the part I'm talking about. You can see how it's this long slant as it comes out here, and it's just barely catching on the other side, like here. If I just take that out on both sides, my clearance problem is completely resolved. So there's no issue with that. The tie rod may not even, the ball joint may not even be fully seated in the knuckle, because I don't have this tight, and I can't quite see where the hole for the cotter pin is in the wrong place, so I can't see how far up. But this may actually seat further down on the ball joint when the nut is tightened, which would actually solve this problem entirely, because if this came up by 1/8 of an inch, it would solve this problem by 1/8 of an inch. So I'm not worried about the clearance there. One thing that does happen with this modification is the ends of that end of the control arm, the inner end, and the cross member are the same height off the ground. Like if I lowered this via these lowering spindles, or I lowered it by cutting a spring or getting different springs that lowered it by 2.5 inches, that end of the control arm, the inner end, and the cross member would come down 2.5 inches. Either way, it wouldn't make a difference. Now, where it makes a difference is this end of the control arm relative to the height of the van goes down by that 2.5 inches. Because in a spring lowering, this control arm ends up flatter than it would be, because the gap between the pocket and the control arm is, so the control arm ends up flatter, which means that this end stays closer to its stock height off the ground, even if that end gets closer to the ground. So your ground clearance for close to the wheel doesn't change. In this case, this angle doesn't change, but this whole, relative to the wheel, this whole thing moves down, which means you could theoretically hit the bottom of the control arm, but you'd have to straddle something in such a way that it was way over towards the wheel to hit that. And at that point, I really feel like you've caused your own problem. So I'm not particularly concerned about that. But that is something to be aware of. The advantage I feel with lowering spindles is that change in the angle of the control arm with a lowering spring changes the geometry of everything. The upper bushing, the upper control arm, the lower control arm, the lower bushing, the tie rod on both ends, the height of the shock, like where in the shock's travel it is, all of that changes. And if all of that changes, you can accelerate wear on all those parts because they're not operating in their designed centered spot, and that geometry can make the front end off alignment. Obviously, you can get it aligned and adjust for that to some degree. But it also just means that it's not the geometry is not correct. You've permanently changed the front end's geometry by doing that. So it's not going to operate quite the right way. And you have less suspension travel because obviously you're taking that, you're using up part of the suspension travel. It's normal up travel by having that spring lower. So they both, springs are generally easier to do than spindles. They're generally cheaper than spindles. But this is why I prefer spindles. But obviously the downside of the spindle is the end of the lower control arm is lower, and you have more likely to have wheel clearance issues. Now that I know what's going on here, I'm going to blow this back apart again, and we're going to work towards final assembly. Yeah, looks like we're fine. The wire's not interfering anywhere. All the bolt holes line up. So this will work just fine. So my other fear of not being able to use this, because of the ABS, totally unfounded. These are wire brushed down, cleaned off, painted on both sides. The brackets for the sensors got a quick and half-ass painting. Down here, both sides got the calipers painted, this painted. This you can barely even see, like this is ground down, but it's virtually unnoticeable. Actually, it's more noticeable just because some of the paint, I didn't do such a good job of cleaning off the flaked off paint that it caused, but that's been painted. All right, it's another day. It's many days actually, because I ended up ordering some stuff and waiting until it came in. So, as you remember me talking before, I managed to lose the little goodie bag with the castle nut and all of that stuff from the ball joints. Went trying to find that stuff, and it ended up the easiest, maybe not the cheapest, but still pretty damn cheap way was to just order 2 shitty ball joints. These cost less than $6 a pop, and they have that stuff. So as long as the castle nut is the same thread, it cost me $6 to replace that. The castle nut, even if I could find them, probably was going to be $2-3 bucks. This was just so much simpler. Since I was placing a rock auto order, I also got new wheel seals. That'll let me pull the bearings out, clean them, repack them, and put them back in again. And then I got a new set of brake pads, just because if I'm tearing it all apart, might as well throw some brake pads in, and then I don't have to worry about the brakes for another couple of years. So yeah, we're just basically going to bang into that. If I'm really lucky, this castle nut will fit, and I'll just be able to start assembling the front end. All right, let's find out. Nut fits. I've got my cotter pin and I've got my little grease fitting. So this will let me finish this job. All right, well, I got that together, but this delay messed me up. 2 things happened. 1, I kind of forgot how some of the stuff came on and off. And 2, things got moved around in the intervening times. Every time I needed to come in here and get something or do something, I'd move stuff out of the way, and the brake assemblies ended up mixed up. So I initially was putting the right hand dust shield on, but with the left hand, initially I was putting the right hand, or the driver's side dust shield and sensor on, and then when I realized my error, I brought over the correct dust shield but didn't bring over the correct sensor, so I got it all assembled only to discover that was wrong, so I had to take it apart to put that back together again. I've got the 2 ball joints in and secured, that's why the jack's no longer here, but I have now, in all that getting up and down, I seem to have managed to kick the little, this thing that I literally just acquired somewhere. So I need to do like a bunch of cleaning and sweeping to see if I can find it. So that's a little frustrating, but at least the two ball joints are in at this point. Now, this is the tie rod that I had to hammer in order to get it out. My plan for this is I'm going to come in here, because what I've actually done is mushed the threads like up. So what I'm going to do is actually come in here and just grind that section of thread off so that it's not smashed up in the other one, and then just clean up the edges of what I've ground with a file. And then that should allow me to start the nut on it. And the nut is going well past those threads. Those threads will be completely out of it once it's fully secured in place, so they won't affect the strength or its ability to stay locked on. So that should be totally fine. It'll just be a real pain to get the threads started, but it beats replacing the entire tie rod just because of, I keep sticking my finger in grease, just because I managed to mush up the threads a little bit. So I'm actually going to turn the camera off right now because I just got to clean all this stuff up and I got to deal with that. And I'll come back when I'm at the next stage. Hey, guess what I just found? The missing hardware. I'm so upset because I bought those other ones, but I'm also really grateful because I lost that thing. Yeah, they were, show you, in here. So I tucked them away where they wouldn't fall out, just like I'd done with the other ones, but I couldn't see them until this was installed and everything was assembled. So, not my smartest moment right there. If I can locate. So what I'm going to do at this point, possibly return those ball joints. Don't quite know. But that's going to mostly depend on, because they were $6 each, by the time shipping to go back to Rock Auto happens, they will, they'll probably not be worth anything. I'll probably get like 50 cents back. But at least now I have another one of those fittings. Ah! Anyway, now that I have all the pieces, now I have abundance of pieces, I will get this together. I did realize I never cleaned and painted the sway bar. This project's going to take longer. I thought I was going to be able to put it all back together today, but I've got probably at least one more day. So, yeah, I will pick up when I get to that. It is together except for the brakes at this point. This is the bracket off the other one. I ground off the two rivets holding it on. I had to grind a little bit in here because this center section on the Moog is wider, and then painted it, bolted it in. You can see my half-assed job painting the other ones. This, if I can make it so you can see, if you can see it, you can see that flat that's ground on there. That was enough to let me get here, and there's one on the back was enough to let me get this nut on. And as you can see, it's not involved anymore. The nut goes right past it, so that doesn't compromise the strength of it at all. I threw just 3 shims on either side in the top here of the 2 bolts. There was different ones on both vans. It's going to be different. I don't know if it's going to be the number of shims this crossmember came off of that on that van, or the number of shims that were on this. So I'm just putting an amount of shims in there so that I can bolt it tight. And then when I take it somewhere, they'll adjust caster and camber and get those shims right. Shock is in. Everything's tightened down. All of my cotter pins are in. So the only thing with it up in the air that needs to happen is the brakes need to go on. This nut, the one on the other side, and the 2 for the top for the same thing, can't be tightened down until the van has been put down on its wheels and settled, which usually means drive it back and forth a little bit, like just a few feet. And then I'll tighten those up, because if I tighten these down now, it's going to tighten the bushing in the droop state. And if I do that when the van's in ride height stage, this bushing will be already cranked over and it'll wear out faster. So that's got to wait a little bit. But yeah, like I said, this side's all together. Royal pain, but all went together. It's mostly, largest problem was remembering what I needed to do and where things fit and that kind of stuff. So time for the other side. I pulled the wheel bearings out, stuck them in the parts cleaner, went in and had dinner, and just came out, cleaned them up, finished cleaning them all, repacked them all. You know, massive grossness that always is, because I had to do it by hand. My grease gun is almost out of grease after filling the new ball joints, so I had to pack them by hand. So that was a disgusting mess, as it always is. But the other one's even on the van already, but these are in. New wheel seals. This one just needs to have the back of the rotor clean, so I can pop it on somewhere in here. There it is. Here's my washer. This one on this side, I just need to finish tightening it down and then put a cotter pin in it. I have to go find my cotter pins. The only reason it hasn't been finished up. I did have a moment of scare because I fitted this onto what felt like fully seated and then went and screwed this on, and the nut was about there. So I was just terrified for a moment, and then so I just jiggled it a little bit more and pushed, and there's a step back there that the seal rides on, and it finally popped the seal up onto that, at which point it went back enough that the nut would go on. So that means everything has fit so far perfectly. These are C20 lowering spindles, so there was always a fear of fit. But that's the last real piece that I wasn't 100% sure on. That fits. So as soon as I have those on, I'm going to compress the calipers so I can fit the new pads, finish cleaning the front of the rotor, pop the pads on, pop the calipers on. The pins for one of the calipers I replaced when I did these brakes last year or the year before. Sorry, my nose itches. And at that time, the pins on the other side were fine. Now this time, the new pins are fine, but the other pins are all rusty and gross. But O'Reilly's basically got them in, sent me the notification half an hour before they closed today. It's Sunday. So I'm going to have to pick those up tomorrow. So I'm going to assemble it with the old pins just so I can have the front end together. And then that'll be a really quick job later to yank those pins out, drop the new ones in. And that'll all be done. Because what I want to do right now is get the van back on its wheels so that I can get it out of the garage. The sway bar may not go on tonight. Obviously I'm going to change those pins later, but I'll have it back on its wheels so I know that it'll actually, everything functions. Yeah, so it's going well. This feels like it's taking forever, but realistically I'm making good progress constantly, so everything is good. I'm going to get out of the rotor run now. Alright, so I have discovered a fitment problem, which is I could test fit the caliper into the bracket and it would work fine with the wheel in the new position. But trying to fit it with the rotor in place and the pads in place, you can't, there's not enough brake line to let you get it out far enough to get it on. It just physically won't fit there. Here, let me see if I can effectively show you. I don't know how obvious this will be, but the pad's back in place. Come on. It just, there's literally like, I need a half an inch more room or something to get it out, and I'm pulling the brake line super taut. So I'm gonna loosen the nut up here that's holding the brake line. What I'm hoping is that I can either loosen or remove this clamp for the brake line, get the caliper in place, and then tighten this back down again. And hopefully that will let me get everything nicely lined up. I also am going to have to make sure once I've got it all in that the caliper is not, or the brake line is not rubbing on anything because of its new position. The last thing I want to do is saw through a brake line. All right, so that's okay. Physically get this on as step one. I compressed the caliper, but still not. still don't have that distance that I, yikes, need. Okay, don't get why I'm having some trouble. Hopefully you can see, because I can't tell how much you can actually make out from where it's positioned, but I don't have a lot of options on this side because I got too much junk pile behind you. There we go. All right. Okay, I don't like that at all. Yikes. I don't think I'm going to be able to show this to you. I'm going to try, but it's probably way too dark. But the line comes off the caliper and is immediately bent hard 90 degrees by the fact that it's up against the top of the spindle here. And it's being forced this way. It comes around the spindle, and then like about here is where it's no longer being held in place by that. But then when you come around to this side, it's, yes, this is in full droop. So I don't know if this is better or worse. When it's down, I think it's probably better because it's above this. But right now it's rubbing on here. I don't like any part of that. That is bad. You do not want that brake line to touch anything, because it will slowly cut through it from vibration and suspension movement and whatnot. And yeah, that is bad. That fitment is really, really bad. And the hard line that comes up off the caliper comes up and has a turn that literally dumps it right into the top of the spindle. And then over here, like I said, it's touching there, and I feel like that's actually going to be worse. Like I guess I can kind of like, okay, now it's on top of it, and that'll be better because once the suspension's in compression, that's not going to be touching at all, and it won't be rubbing anything even when it droops down to this level. It's sitting on there, which I don't like, but again, it's in droop. I feel like I need to see if I can bend this bracket here. Not bracket, the hard line at the end of the brake line is what I'm trying to bend right now. Okay, yeah, I can put a little bit of a turn in that. I'm changing the angle of it, basically. Okay, oh, there we go. Yeah, that's much better. So now it is not touching. All right, but come on, I just don't want this. Every part's brand new and nice and tight. Suddenly it don't want to turn worth a damn. And that's, yeah, I hate that. I hate that fit so much. So this caliper was down 2.5 inches. So this brake line used to comfortably run in this sort of void here, and now it's nowhere near that. And with the way the caliper line is designed, it's going to be very hard to get it to be in that space, because it's some brake lines, you've got the fitting on the end and almost immediately it's a flex line. This has the fitting and a bit of a tube hard line that brings it up, like it goes vertically away and then kind of in towards the center, but also back towards the engine. And that line puts it exactly in the wrong spot. Yeah, I literally would have to change that to be a U that kind of points back down again to get it clear of everything. And I don't know if I can accomplish that. Biggest problem is just getting something in there, like because I could get a bending tool in there, maybe I can do it. So the reason I'm messing around with this is, at this point my only two options are get this to point the right way, or swap the stock spindle back on. And neither of those is particularly appealing, but this is the less work option. I'm using this tool entirely incorrectly. It's because of the space I have to work with. We're getting somewhere here. Okay. The other thing I'm checking for is, as I'm doing this, I'm making sure I'm not kinking or crimping the pipe, which would limit flow and screw me in a different kind of a way. Let's go out more. I think I did it. Yeah, that's not touching anything anymore at either lock. So what I ended up having to do, this is the pipe I was talking about. It pointed straight at here, like it came out, and then that line was like hard against this and hard that way. There was no room for it to go anywhere else. So what I did was basically bent it further back towards the motor and down. So now you can see it points into, again, that void area. And I tested, and when I was doing the bends, I had it, you saw, cocked all the way over, because that was the position it was most likely to rub. And now it's completely free of everything. So that I now feel good about. I did the other side, it's all together. And then something occurred to me, which is why I'm back on this side. This is the side I have the wheel at, which is, will the wheel fit where the the grease fitting. The grease nip, my new fear is the grease nipple is gonna smack the wheel. So I gotta get some lug nuts on this thing. Figure it out. Oh, wow. Huh. All that fear. So, when I was fitting this wheel before, it was massively overlapping the lower ball joint. And now when I'm fitting it on, it's not. And I'm realizing that I think the difference might have been the backing plate, because I had the rotor on, but I didn't have the backing plate on, and that may have spaced everything out just enough, possibly But yeah, none of that is a problem now. Oh, wait, what are you scraping on? What are you scraping on? We have a new problem. We have new scraping noises. Sounds like it's scraping on the caliper, but I don't see any place for it to be doing so. It is a tight fit, I will admit that. But no, I think I'm actually okay there. Yeah. There's now way more space under there than there was before. Between my little bit of grinding. Actually, no, not even my little bit. Because I'm nowhere near where I was before. That's super strange. Here we go. Oh, that is noticeably lower. Sweet. All right, it's almost 11 o'clock at night, I just noticed. So I'm done for tonight. Tomorrow in the daylight, we'll pull it out, see what it looks like. Alrighty, sadly no cool wheels yet for the front, but damn, that looks good. Really tightened up the gap here a lot. Part of it is that the driveway slopes this way, so it's less obvious that it's down in the front, but it's definitely not up. Usually the van sits slightly that way. The front end is still far enough off the ground. I'm not worried about smashing the valence on stuff, so I think that's a good height. So next step, I need to go get new hardware for the front sway bar, and I have new bushings for that, so I'm going to go out and get the hardware. I went and got hardware for the sway bar, so I'm going to pop that in now. Unfortunately, in the action of backing the van out and backing in, there was drips, and so I pulled it in and let it run, and the not power steering, transmission cooler line, one of them is leaking. Not really surprised. They were kind of in need of replacing, and jacking the engine up and down must have just been enough to crack it somewhere. I'm not going to worry about that right this moment. I'm going to get this project done, and then tomorrow or something I'll work on that. But I'm not going to work on that right now because I just can't be bothered. I want to get this bar in though so that I can call the front end done. All right, bar is in. Getting it lined up on the control arms is a pain because that bushing is slightly torqued. So you kind of can get one bolt in and then you're fighting the whole thing to get the other one in. But I did manage to get it, so you know, that's the only important part. So that's all mounted up. Last thing is tighten up the 8 control arm bolts now that the van is on the ground and has been back and forth, so that everything's had a chance to settle. Okay, that's the last of that. The bottom ones are easy to tighten. I could just use the gun, but the top ones, because of the shock and all the other stuff, had to be done by hand. But it's all in there, it's all tightened down. So at this point, it is a done job. I have to take it somewhere and get it aligned, but yeah, that was hard work. It was brutally hard work. But I'm glad it's done. Everything has been redone. I'm really looking forward to getting those 2 slot mags redone so that I can put some new tires on the front and have my van look all cool again, especially with it lowered. But that's going to be it for now. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.